Thank you. And I too acknowledge the first peoples of this land who have been the custodians for over 60,000 years. We endeavour at the Interfaith Centre to always include Aboriginal people in our events, in our art programs, and I think it was in 2006, we were invited to go to the Second Middle Eastern Congress in Amman, Jordan, and to take a cultural program. And so I thought, what would be the most appropriate to take from Melbourne, Australia? And I thought of Philip Glass's Voices for didgeridoo, organ and narrator. And this was to celebrate, I should say, the City of Melbourne asked Philip Glass to compose this piece for the grand organ, which is the European sacred instrument, and the didgeridoo. And so off we went, Auntie Joy Wandon Murphy, who's the elder from Melbourne, and two wonderful didgeridoo musicians and one of our best organists, and we played the concert in Amman. And in a marketplace on a Friday evening, there was an arts market, and so hundreds of people were able to experience Aboriginal stories and didgeridoo. I'd like to just share with you what an interfaith minister is, because it is something new in Australia, and probably I was the first, I think, in Australia. 19 years ago, I studied at an interfaith seminary in New York and was ordained as an interfaith minister in the Cathedral of St. John the Divine. Now, in general, interfaith ministers stay in their own tradition, but they are informed, knowledgeable, and deeply respectful of the world's religions and spiritualities. Interfaith ministers work in many different professions: chaplaincy, nursing, teaching, marriage celebrancy, and as I came from a background in education, when I returned to Australia, I founded the Interfaith Centre of Melbourne, and we've had many programs to bring about more understanding and respect between people of faith and no faith since that time. And we do it through seminars, through ceremonies, interfaith gatherings, pilgrimages, study tours, and the arts. And I wanted to specifically talk about that today. As we were talking this morning about how most of us who are here are already converted to the notion of interfaith dialogue, interfaith interaction, or we're along the road. But people attend a place of worship, would not come to a conference, maybe would not know of a conference, would not be involved in any interfaith activity. While this is quite a short time to share all of the things that we do, I thought I would just focus on two events that we have done that I think have proved to be very, very successful and show the collaboration we can create together with people of other faiths. Following 9/11, as you know, there was a lot of negative feeling about Muslims in Australia. Not only that, but there was a lot of anti-Semitism. It was a time when there were the problems between Israel and Palestine still seemed to be going, and that seemed to push people into two different camps. So there was a lot of ill feeling. And so together with some other people, I thought one of the best things we could do would be to create an arts program on a time when the Jews, Christians and Muslims did live in harmony for nearly 800 years in Spain. Now, this was a period that I never learnt about at school. Maybe children today do, but it was unknown to me. We called it a shining example, the golden age of Spain before 1492, how Muslims, Jews and Christians lived together in Al-Andalus in relative harmony and created a glorious culture. So I wrote the narration, and our much beloved actor, the late Charles Bud Tingwall, was the narrator. Muslim students from King Khalid College read this ancient Arabic poetry in Arabic, and they were so proud. And students from Bialik College, the Jewish college, read the Jewish poetry in Hebrew. And then we had professional actors and actresses to read the poetry in English, to bring it all alive for the English speakers. And then we had musicians from the three traditions. Now this brought together many, many people who would never go to an interfaith event because they were attracted by the music, by the poetry. And the next year, the Jewish Museum of Australia asked us if we would repeat it, and so we did. We just changed a few little things, but mainly it was the same with Charles Bud Tingwall, the narrator, and the music and the poetry. You might know that Mevlana Jalaluddin Rumi is the most popular poet in the United States today, and yet he lived in the 13th century. So we brought out Coleman Barks, who's known as the best translator or the most popular translator of Rumi, for the Rumi concert, and over 600 people came. Again, people from different traditions and no tradition, and they learnt so much about the mystical form of Islam. I think one of our most successful programs has been an art exhibition. This was a time when Muslim women were having their hijabs pulled off, they were being abused in the streets. This art exhibition came from the National Gallery of Jordan, and it was called Breaking the Veils, Women Artists from the Islamic World. 64 artworks by 52 women from 21 Islamic countries, all contemporary art. Now, I only had a little opening in which to bring this to Australia, so we had to rent a commercial gallery in the city of Melbourne. The Governor opened the exhibition. I invited the Islamic Council of Victoria and many other religious people to come to the opening. And one of those people was a woman called Noor Shkembi, and Noor has given me permission to use her name here. She mentioned to me that she and some other Muslim women did a little bit of painting in their spare time. So I said, would you like to bring in your artwork? I hadn't seen it, but would you like to bring it in, and maybe in a lunch hour you could just give a little talk, maybe write a little paragraph or two about Islamic art. And so they did. And they gained confidence. And Noor then helped me with a lot of interfaith events, and when it was the time for the Parliament of the World's Religions, I asked her to be on the Arts and Culture Committee, and together we organised 5 art exhibitions, about 50 performances, and the Sacred Arts, the Sacred Music concert. By this stage, Noor and her friends had gathered a lot of experience and confidence, so Noor became the arts officer for the Islamic Council of Victoria and curated an art exhibition every year for Muslim artists. They are now selling their artwork. Noor then went on, and she's just completed her master's in community art development, and I should have mentioned this previously, but she and her women friends got together and said we really should have an Islamic Museum of Australia. So one of the husbands of the group, he said he would take a year off and find the funding, and in February of this year the Islamic Museum of Australia opened, and Noor is now the art director of the Islamic Museum of Australia. So through collaboration, it might only start with a tiny little seed, but you can see how it develops. And then she's brought out a graffiti artist from France who worked with young people, not only young Muslims, but young people from every tradition, to paint graffiti in all the lanes, well, not all the lanes, but 2 or 3 lanes in Melbourne. And those 5 young, at least 5 of those people those young people have now developed projects together for bringing in more young people to do things together. So one little step leads to another, and we never know which step that will be. And finally, I'd just like to mention that there are many people we know in our own traditions who have very fixed ideas, and there's not much we can do about that verbally, I don't think, to persuade them. But what I've found is that there are other ways, and again, this is through the arts. But just a few years ago, we were able to invite Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, to a gala dinner, and it was the only invitation he accepted outside his concerts. So one of my dear friends, who only just passed away recently, he had bought a convent, and he said, "You can use my convent, Helen." It was a holiday home for his family. He said, "It'll sleep about 35. You can invite anybody, but no Muslims." And it was definite. So, of course, I invited him to the gala dinner, and other people who were key people in the community who had very fixed ideas. And after sharing a table with people of all traditions, and especially Muslim men and women, in the break, he came over to me and he said, "Helen, you can invite anybody into my convent." Now, he had a big engineering works, and this was a great change in his whole perception, because there were the possibilities of employing people who were from a Muslim background instead of being so set in his ways. I think this happens often with people that we know, and people who say they are very religious and yet they still have those very fixed ideas. So the arts are very, very powerful. And may I just finish with this one sentence? The arts have always been a powerful medium for bringing about more understanding, respect, which open the hearts of people from diverse cultures. The arts may include music, song, theatre, poetry, film, multimedia, dance, visual arts, architecture, and other forms. When we admire an artwork, a performance, or any artistic accomplishment, not only do we increase our understanding, but we also increase our respect for the peoples and the cultures which produce them. Thank you.